Hey, how's it going? My name's Travis. I just wanted to make this first YouTube video ever on my channel about sexualities, and I think that sexualities are a really good thing to talk about, especially in today's day and age where everyone is deciding that they identify as something different, which is totally fine. I just think that there's a lot of conflict going on right now on the internet and stuff because people are uninformed about certain sexualities that I think could help people and maybe prevent some of that conflict. So I first wanted to start off with the definition of sexuality, which is a person's, I'm reading from a piece of paper here, sorry. It's a person's sexual orientation or preference, and this also means like the gender that they are attracted to. I am not an expert on any of this. This is just my personal opinion, things that I've known from a couple of friends that I've met that maybe identified as certain sexualities, and honestly I can only speak from like absolute knowledge from myself and things that I've experienced and everything. So don't take this as a say-all, like if you meet somebody who says something different, then just go with what they say. So the first one that we're going to talk about is heterosexual, and most people know this one. It's supposed to be the normal in the world. Heterosexual is defined as having an attraction to someone of the opposite gender. So that would mean if you identify as a girl, then you are attracted to boys, or if you identify as a boy, then you're attracted to girls. We just automatically assume that people that we meet are going to be heterosexual and that we don't need to know anything about other sexualities because there's such a small population in the world that does identify as something other than heterosexual. But that in itself is another term which I'm going to define for you, which is called heteronormativity, or also known as heterosexism. So that's where you just assume that everyone that you meet is heterosexual and that is the right way to live your life. You assume that the only form of marriage is between a man and a woman, because people don't understand that you can be anything other than straight. But it's rude and it's disrespectful to sort of assume that someone is just automatically what the norm is. Like, there isn't really even a norm in America anymore, or in the world. I think that normal is just something that people like to fake, and everyone's weird, like in some way, because there is no absolute 100% normal. There's no baseline for everyone to be. I go on to the next sexuality that people probably know best, and that's homosexuality, and that is defined as having an attraction to someone of the same sex as you. Now, obviously, homosexuality, just in America, it got legalized to have same-sex marriages. More people understand probably homosexuality and heterosexuality are the two biggest not accepted sexualities. I still think homosexuality has a long way to go to be accepted, but I think it's the one that's most common knowledge. I think a lot of people know about both of those sexualities. Also, going off of homosexuality, there's something called same gender loving, or SGL. That was a term created by the black queer community, and it was supposed to represent someone who was lesbian or gay, but those people, it's for the people who don't identify with those terms because they think that it's too stereotypically white, or that the white community has taken over those terms. And so that's absolutely acceptable as well, nothing against that. They mean the same thing, it's just that the black community, they wanted to have a different sexuality that better represented their own community and stuff. Since they're a part of both, there would be a part of both the black community and the homosexual community. The next sexuality that we're going to talk about is bisexuality, and so this one is probably, again, the third most known sexuality, the most common knowledge one, and this one is defined as having an attraction to people of both the same sex and the opposite sex as you. And so this attraction can vary, with some bisexuals only wanting to pursue sexual relationships with someone of the opposite sex, and wanting to pursue both romantic and sexual with someone of the same sex, etc. People can decide which one that they lean towards. I think that that's the term I've most heard been used in the community, saying that I'm a bisexual, but maybe I lean towards men specifically, or I lean towards women. However, going off of this too, bisexuality does not mean that that person is desperate or easy. That's just a common misconception, is that bisexual people are greedy. And it doesn't mean that they can't commit either. I don't think that someone who's bisexual and maybe is evenly distributed between liking women and men, I think that they can commit to one person if that's what they want. If both of the people involved want a committed relationship, then they have no problems being with, say, a man, and they don't miss being with women. I think it's just sexuality. That's how it works. I think that it doesn't mean that you have to have both. I think it's just that you can like both. The next sexuality is called pansexual. So this one, it's kind of getting... pansexual, I think, has been picking up speed in the recent years, but it's still probably not up there with heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual. So pansexual is defined as sexual or romantic attraction to people of any sex or gender identity. And so that means that pansexuals commonly refer to themselves as gender blind because they don't care about what gender a person is. They only look at them for their personality, their dreams, their goals, things like that. They'll still be respectful and they'll say like he or she, whatever gender pronoun that you want them to use, but they don't look at it when it comes to sexual or romantic relationships. They just look at you as a person. So I think in a perfect world, in all honesty, everyone would either be pansexual or the next sexuality that I'm about to mention, which is omnisexual, just because it shows that gender is really something that we came up with as a community, or as people. And it's not really anything that matters. I think pansexuality is a really good way of showing people that you care more about them as a person and not what they have in their pants or who they identify as. However, again, I think sexuality is not something that you can change. So just because someone isn't a pansexual doesn't mean that they're like some prejudiced person. I think it's just you're born with the sexuality that you're born with. The next sexuality that we're going to talk about is omnisexual, and I mentioned this previously when talking about pansexual, but omnisexual is defined as the attraction to people of any sex or gender identity, and it's very similar to pansexual. I actually had a lot of trouble figuring out what the difference was when I was first looking it up because I had never heard of omnisexual before. But the difference is that while pansexuals consider themselves to be gender blind, like I said before, they don't pay attention to someone's gender, omnisexuals recognizes people's gender and instead are attracted to each single gender identity. It's sort of like how bisexuals can lean one way or another and they can say, oh, I like women more than I like men. Omnisexuals can say like, oh, I like agender people more than I like men, or I like, you know, they recognize people's genders, and so they'll still have not bias, but they'll have opinions on each one, and they'll think about who they like. It's called demisexual. And demisexual is someone who is only sexually attracted to another person after an emotional bond has been established. So that means that they do not feel sexual attraction or even romantic attraction with some demisexuals until that you've known someone for a really long time and you've created some sort of bond together. Demisexuals can also be used almost like an adverb. So someone who is demisexual can also identify as pansexual, and then they would be demi-pansexual, or they can identify as heterosexual, and so on and so forth, just be demi-heterosexual, demi-homosexual. So it is often said that demisexuals will very rarely even find someone that they can be attracted to, either sexually or romantically in their lifetime, and that it might only happen 2 or 3 times just because they really need that connection to happen before anything becomes of the relationship. They start off as friends, every single relationship, and then it will maybe progress from there, not meaning that if they have a deep emotional connection with somebody, it doesn't mean that they automatically like them. I just mean that it has to be there as a prerequisite to even begin thinking about romantic attraction. Now the next one is actually completely opposite than all the other sexualities I've talked about before, and this is asexual. Just as you can have a sexuality, you can be asexual and not have a sexuality. So asexual is defined in the most basic terms as someone who does not experience romantic or sexual attraction to any other person. And because while sexuality is the umbrella term for heterosexual, homosexual, demisexual, all of those, asexual is the umbrella term for anyone who does not experience sexual attraction. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is called a repulsed asexual. Repulsed asexuals are opposed to any sex. This means that they do not want any sort of sexual relationship. The next one, flexible asexuals, they for the most part they're like pretty similar to repulsed asexuals, but it's not like they completely are against having romantic or sexual relationships. Flexible asexuals will be in a relationship, so they might find romantic attraction to some person, and then they will have sexual relationships to please their partner. So they're not completely against sexual relationships, it's just that they don't get a lot out of it. But they will still do it because they recognize that it makes their other half happy. And it's not like they're pushovers or anything like that either. It's just that they recognize that a lot of people do like sex even if they don't, and so then they're gonna do it with them to make them happy. And aromantic asexual have no romance. They prefer to be single and don't experience crushes and are often repulsed asexuals. So aromantic asexuals would be the person who does not like anything. So they are not romantic in any way and they're not sexual in any way. Repulsed asexuals then is we just no sexual attraction, but they might still find romantic attraction in people. And then aromantic asexuals is the one who does not want anything. They don't want any sort of romantic or sexual relationship. Then the next term, instead of aromantic, this one is romantic asexuals. This is asexuals who experience romantic attraction. They can be heteroromantic, homoromantic, biromantic, or panromantic, etc., you know, with all the other prefixes before it. And so while they don't want any sort of sexual relationships, they do still want romantic relationships. And so that's where the term like hetero comes in. Say you're a hetero-romantic asexual, then you would want to be with someone of the opposite sex, but then you wouldn't want to have sexual relationships. And again, if you were a flexible hetero-romantic asexual, so again, I think that the best way of describing yourself as an asexual or talking to someone who's an asexual is just to be clear about it. You know, I think that if you meet somebody who says that they're asexual, kind of ask about it. Don't push, don't pry or anything. If they don't want to tell you, then don't force them to. But just, you know, ask like, hey, what kind of asexual are you? Or, you know, I think that would be okay. I think for the most part, if you're asking in a polite way, most people are going to respond again with a polite answer. They're going to either say like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or they'll be able to say, you know, like, oh, I'm an aromantic asexual, and then maybe they'd even be happy that you understood that there's more than just asexuality. They could be happy that you asked about it. You know, I think it means a lot just to show that you know something about it, a little bit of knowledge. The last form of asexuality is called gray asexuality, and this is the area in between asexuality and sexuality, which is why it's called gray, because it's a gray area. And this includes people who, and I quote, experience sexual attraction very rarely, under special circumstances, or of such a low intensity that it is ignorable. So this includes people like demisexuals, where it's only under specific instances, like when a relationship has been established, that it's negligible and stuff like that. So people who fall under gray asexual may not specifically come out and say that they're gray asexual. They might just say like, oh, I'm demisexual. But just, it's a good thing to know that that's the umbrella term. If someone does say that they're gray asexual, it means that they're in between. And it's not like a stepping stone or anything. It's not saying like, oh, I'm trying to decide if I'm asexual or sexual. It's just that that's what they are. They're gray asexual. Alright, this next sexuality is gynosexual, or gynesexual. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this one, and again, you can debate it in the comments or whatever you want to do. But basically this is someone attracted specifically to femininity or to women. And again, with the pronunciation of the word, I think that there's some debate about it, because it's spelled G-Y-N-E sexual, so as you can see right above me. So that's supposed to be, it would either be gynesexual or gynosexual or gynesexual or gynosexual or something like that, just because there are different words that use the same prefix. So like if you think of gynecologist, someone who is a feminine doctor, then it would be gyno. But if you think of something like androgynous, which is the combination of both having masculine and feminine aspects to yourself, then it would be gynosexual. So it's kind of up in the air, and you can decide for that. And if you use it as something as supposed to be you are attracted towards women, that removes using gender in your sexuality, which is really good. Again, if you identify as something other than the gender binaries, you can say that you're gynosexual or gynosexual, whichever one you decide. And it shows that you're attracted to women without referencing your own gender, because if you said that you were heterosexual and you're attracted to women, that would be implying that you're a male. And if you say that you're homosexual and you're attracted to women, then that would be implying that you're female. So that's why gynosexual, that one's really good for just creating a baseline of a community that kind of doesn't use gender in their sexualities, which honestly the two things are completely unrelated in the first place. So yeah, that one's really great. And then the complete opposite of that one is androsexual. Like I was saying with androgynous, how gyno or gyno in androgynous, or androgyny is the feminine part, and androsexual is the masculine one, so that is someone who is attracted to masculinity. The next sexuality, sapiosexual, which this one I've only heard of once before I did this video, so I'm not sure if there's a very small community of sapiosexuals, but anyway, sapiosexuality is someone who is attracted to intelligence, and it often is regardless of gender or appearance. So if you're a intellectual in their minds, then that's where romantic or sexual attraction would start to begin. So it just is purely based on what's up here, what's your brain like. The next sexuality is questioning or bi-curious. Again, I think this one is more of a stepping stone. It's something that someone can come out as while they're in the process of figuring themselves out, and that's because someone who is questioning or bi-curious is someone who is experimenting with their romantic or sexual attraction. So it's just to decide what they like. It's the in-between process of being like when you discover your sexuality and trying to decide of who it is that you like and what sexuality you identify as. So that one is cool just because if you say that you're questioning, then maybe it means that you could be trying out things with someone of the same gender or someone of a gender non-binary. The next sexuality, again, this one is pretty recent. It only came up within the last couple of years. I think the first mention of it, they said on the internet, was 2010. This one is scoliosexual, also named heterosexual or heterosexual. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's heterosexual. Again, you can comment in the comment section below if I'm completely butchering this. But this one is attracted exclusively to genderqueer people. So this would be anyone that falls outside of the gender binary of male and female. And that doesn't include people who are trans, because trans people are technically still not cisgender, but once they are a trans woman, then they would be a woman, and that is a gender binary. If you're a transgender man, then you are a man, and you are no longer, you're not a part of the gender non-binary because you're a man or a woman. However, it is bordering sort of like fetishism, I think, in a way. It's sort of like trans chasers, or people who, again, there's varying views of this in the community. Some people think that it's great that there are people who specifically only want to be with trans people or genderqueer people, but then others might be offended by it. So I think that if you decide that you are heterosexual or scoliosexual, then you should just make it clear what your intentions are. I think that if you're doing it to see someone who's genderqueer as purely a sexual object, you're probably not doing it for the right reasons. I think that if you're just saying that you're this sexuality because you like people who are genderqueer, then that's fine. I think that you just have to communicate about it. Also, mentioning about why there's two different names for this one, scoliosexual and hetero or heterosexual, whatever, I don't even remember what I said now, is because scoliosexual or scoliosexual, that was considered, the prefix means bent, and so that's kind of a negative, like saying that someone who is genderqueer is bent, and so like they're misshapen in some way, and so that's why you find attraction in them. Whereas hetero or hetero, whatever the pronunciation is, that sexuality, the prefix means other, so it would just mean other than the gender binary, which is just, obviously that one's probably a lot better. The last sexuality that we're going to talk about, this one is pomosexuality or pomosexuality. I'm not sure, again, pronunciation, I'm a mess with that. And this is something that may not be specifically a sexuality. I think it's just a way of thinking. It's a way of living life. These are people who do not agree with the current assumptions about gender and or sexuality. So if you were a pomosexual or I don't know, if you were this sexuality, then you believe that things like male and female and homosexual and heterosexual are not adequate enough to explain human sexuality and gender, because it is such a complex topic and people have different views on it and everything. So these people believe, like, say that you're a heterosexual woman in society's eyes. If you're a homosexual or this sexuality, then you could say that you're a homosexual male because it doesn't matter to you. You think like that the gender words that we have in society today, they don't mean anything. They're arbitrary. And so as long as you're getting the message across adequately that you're attracted to men, then you'd be okay with it. That's how you see it. It's almost kind of like the the nonconformists of the sexuality. Alright, so there you go. That was my little sexuality 101 lesson. I don't think that there is a YouTube video that specifically lists every single sexuality and tries to go in a little bit of detail about all of them. And that may just be because, again, I'm not an expert on this, and neither is anyone else. So, again, even just the way that I was butchering some of the sexualities' names, that could have been bad. I just wanted to make a good list, a comprehensive list for people to come to and kind of realize, like, certain sexualities do exist, and maybe there are ones that you haven't heard of, or something like that. But anyway, if you liked the video, I think you should leave a like. And also, if you learned something new, if you heard of a sexuality that you didn't know of, or you already knew the sexuality, but it's something that you didn't know about it, then again, you should leave a like. And you should also try and kind of share it around, share it with your friends, let people know. I think that, again, like I said, the best way for us to get better in the LGBT plus community, and even just as heterosexuals and cisgender people, I think that it's just a good way to get information. I think that that's the best way to educate yourself. Like I said in the beginning of the video, though, don't take everything that I said in here as truth. I think that if you're talking to someone and they say that they're asexual, but maybe the definition that they say doesn't match what I said in the video, go by what they say. You know, if they want to be asexual and they want you to refer to them as such, then do that. Don't be, like, rude about it. Just accept whatever people want to say is theirs. And also, like I said throughout the video, if I messed anything up, or maybe if I missed a sexuality, which is entirely possible, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below, and I'll try to add annotations or something as I see fit, and maybe I'll even have to update the video at some point, because new sexualities are constantly emerging as people find better ways to explain how they feel. And I wanted to make another video in the future, maybe within a couple of weeks or so, that goes over all the genders that exist in the world, which I think might even be a little bit more complicated than sexualities, honestly. So I think just leaving that like really shows me that you want to see that. It would just be cool to have a comprehensive list of both sexualities and genders. And so that video might even be out right now, and if it is, I'll have it linked down below and everything, but you should definitely check out my channel and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.